The movie begins with a glimpse of a peaceful kingdom. The king and queen, though deeply in love, had no children. After many years, their prayers were answered. They had a daughter. She was born during the winter, with skin as fair as snow and a beauty that was pure and radiant. They named her Snow White. The king and queen raised Snow White with great care and love, knowing she was destined to become the future queen. She grew up to be kind-hearted and friendly, someone who could connect with anyone. Everything seemed perfect until life took a turn. One day, the queen fell seriously ill. Despite their efforts, the illness eventually claimed her life. Snow White hadn't even begun to recover from her grief when, suddenly, a mysterious yet stunningly beautiful woman appeared in the kingdom. No one knew who she was, but everyone was immediately enchanted by her, especially the king. From the moment he saw her, the king was captivated. He fell in love with her, and after some thought, married her without much ceremony. What he didn't know was that this woman was hiding a dark secret. She wasn't just a stranger, she was a witch. And not just any witch, but a cruel and wicked one. Her beauty was a lie, maintained only through magic to deceive those around her. She also possessed a magical mirror, which she consulted daily, always asking, "Who is the most beautiful in the world?" The mirror would always reply, "You are, my queen." Soon after, the kingdom faced threats of war from the south. The king, concerned for his people's safety, asked Snow White to take care of herself and left to assess the situation. He promised to return quickly, but he never did. Snow White waited, but there was no sign of him. With the king gone and the kingdom without a ruler, the evil queen seized her chance. She took full control of the throne, and to eliminate the last threat to her rule, Snow White, she had the princess locked away in the palace, forbidding her from ever leaving. The girl who was meant to rule now lived like a servant, hidden away in a dark corner of the palace, forgotten by all. Time passed, and the people completely forgot about Snow White. Meanwhile, the queen not only tormented Snow White, but also ruined the entire kingdom. Under her reign, the kingdom sank into debt. The queen imposed heavy taxes, and day by day, the people grew poorer. Many couldn't even afford food and were forced to give up their trades, taking jobs as royal guards just to survive. Even though Snow White was no longer a direct threat to the evil queen, the queen still lived in constant fear that Snow White might one day take everything from her. On top of that, Snow White's beauty made her deeply insecure. That's why the queen would often stand in front of her magic mirror, asking the same question again and again. "Is there anyone more beautiful than me?" The mirror always gave the answer she wanted to hear, reassuring her that she was the fairest of them all. This comforted the queen, and she would smile, feeling victorious. In the next scene, Snow White is seen cleaning when she first spots her hero, Jonathan. Jonathan, the leader of a group of thieves, had snuck into the palace to steal once again, but this time Snow White catches a glimpse of him. She quickly tells him to surrender and promises that she can speak to the queen on his behalf to save him. But Jonathan laughs and says, "The evil queen won't listen to me. She's ruined this kingdom. If the real princess were here, maybe she could help, but there's no sign of her. If she were around, things would have never gotten this bad. This queen has no mercy." His words strike a chord in Snow White's heart, but she feels powerless. She was forced to live like a servant, stripped of her identity. Still, she gathers her courage and decides to confront the queen. She tells her, "Things weren't like this when my parents ruled. The people were happy. No one had to go hungry or live in poverty." But the queen only laughs and responds, "Their way of ruling was foolish and wasteful. I'm not like them. If I follow their path, the royal treasury will be empty." While they're arguing, the guards drag Jonathan into the room, having captured him. Snow White begs the queen to forgive him, but the evil queen, in her usual cruelty, orders that Jonathan be tied up outside in the freezing cold until he dies from the chill. Snow White, with her kind heart, can't bear to watch. She secretly helps Jonathan escape and gives him some food before he leaves. The evil queen sees all of this from a distance. Meanwhile, Jonathan is struck by Snow White's kind and gentle eyes, and in that moment, he falls in love with her. Now that he knows the real princess is alive, he is overjoyed. After Jonathan escapes, Snow White stands at the palace gate, silently wondering when she'll ever be free, when she'll finally see the outside world again. That same day, the evil queen returns to her mirror and, as always, asks, "Who is the fairest of them all?" But this time, the mirror doesn't name her. Instead, it says the name she dreaded the most, Snow White. The queen is furious. She never liked Snow White, but now she sees her as a real enemy. Enraged, she becomes obsessed with destroying her. She summons her huntsman and commands him to take Snow White into the forest and kill her. Though the huntsman is reluctant, no one dares disobey the queen. She even hands him a box and says coldly, "Bring me her heart in this." The huntsman takes Snow White deep into the forest, but once they arrive, his conscience stops him. He cannot harm the innocent girl. Instead, he confesses everything. the queen's orders, and even the possibility that her father might still be alive. He tells her to run, to disappear, and never let the queen find her. Snow White flees into the forest, terrified and alone. The woods seem alive, filled with strange and frightening shapes that try to attack her. She runs blindly, scared for her life. Finally, after what feels like forever, she stumbles upon a group of gentle forest animals who approach her with kindness. For the first time in a long while, Snow White feels a moment of peace. Seeing her fragile state, the animals take pity on her and lead her to a small cottage hidden deep in the forest. Though it's unfamiliar, Snow White is too exhausted to think. Inside, she finds several small beds lined up in a row. Her body gives in, and without a second thought, she lies down on one of them and falls into a deep, much-needed sleep. After some time, the owners of the cottage return. It's 7 little dwarfs who work all day in the diamond mines and come home each night to rest. Their names are Doc, Grumpy, Bashful, Sleepy, Sneezy, Happy, and Dopey. The dwarfs enter their home ready to relax, but they stop in their tracks when they see Snow White asleep on one of their beds. Alarmed and confused, they huddle together in fear. Finally, the curious and playful Dopey musters up the courage to approach her. That's when he and Snow White meet for the first time. Snow White finds Dopey adorable, but startled and scared, he tries to defend himself by attacking her. She quickly calms him down, gently explains her situation, and shares the hardship she's endured. Hearing her story, the dwarfs are moved. Though hesitant at first, they agree to let her stay for the night. Snow White tells them that she plans to leave the next day to head south in search of her father. Meanwhile, back at the palace, the evil queen uses her magic mirror and discovers the truth. Snow White is still alive. Furious, she rushes to check the box the huntsman had given her, the one that was supposed to contain Snow White's heart. But when she opens it, she finds only a red apple inside. Enraged, the queen throws the box aside and immediately orders the huntsman to be imprisoned for betraying her. She also commands her guards to search every corner of the land and bring Snow White back to her, dead or alive. Back in the forest, Snow White quickly becomes beloved by the dwarfs. In just a short time, she wins over their hearts and even helps them get along better with each other. The cottage becomes cleaner, warmer, and more cheerful with her around. She especially takes a liking to Dopey, who had always been teased by the others for his clumsy behavior. With Snow White's kindness and encouragement, Dopey begins to grow more confident and self-assured. He starts believing in himself, and so do the others. In the next scene, the dwarfs leave for work, heading back to the mines, and Snow White prepares to continue her journey south in search of her father. As she walks through the forest, she unexpectedly runs into Jonathan. The moment they see each other, joy lights up their faces, but their happiness is short-lived. Soon, royal guards sent by the evil queen arrive and attack them. Snow White fights bravely, doing everything she can to defend herself, but there are too many of them for one girl to handle alone. Just when things look grim, Jonathan and his fellow rebels arrive and jump into the fight. Together, they battle the guards with all their might and manage to defeat them, but they don't realize one guard is still alive. Hiding in the trees, he draws his bow and fires a surprise arrow at Snow White. But before it can reach her, Jonathan throws himself in front of her and takes the arrow instead. He collapses, badly injured. Panicked and heartbroken, Snow White rushes him back to the dwarf's cottage, hoping that Doc, whose name sounds like he might be a doctor, can help. But when she gets there, she finds out the truth. Doc isn't actually a doctor. He just happens to have the name. Snow White didn't know how she would save Jonathan's life. Seeing her so distressed, the dwarfs made a promise. They would help her no matter what, and they did. With patience and care, the dwarfs tended to Jonathan's wounds and slowly nursed him back to health. Snow White's joy knew no bounds. When Jonathan finally recovered, the cottage was filled with celebration. Everyone danced and rejoiced together. In the midst of the happiness, Snow White and Jonathan grew closer than ever. They realized they were in love, and in front of everyone, they shared a sweet, heartfelt kiss. When Snow White told Jonathan that she was planning to travel south to search for her father, Jonathan insisted that she shouldn't go. It was still too dangerous for her to be seen. He promised her that he would find her father and bring him back safely. Snow White, though hesitant, agreed. She gave Jonathan a necklace to remember her by, and with the support of the dwarfs, Jonathan set out on his journey, but he didn't get far. Not long after he left, Jonathan was ambushed by guards and had no chance to escape. They captured him and brought him straight to the evil queen. The queen demanded to know Snow White's location, but Jonathan refused to say a word. Still, the necklace around his neck was proof enough that he had seen her recently. Enraged by his defiance, the queen had him thrown into prison. Then the evil queen returned to her secret magic chamber, where she cast a dark spell. Disguising herself as an old ragged woman, she enchanted a batch of apples, turning them deadly. Her plan was to finish what she had failed to do before, kill Snow White. Meanwhile, back in the forest, the dwarfs had gone off to work, leaving Snow White alone at the cottage. Taking advantage of this, the disguised queen arrived and approached Snow White. She lied, saying that Jonathan had been captured and was calling for her from the palace dungeon. Worried and desperate to help him, Snow White prepared to leave right away, but the old woman stopped her. offering a bright red apple. With gentle insistence, the queen urged her to eat it, claiming it would give her strength for the journey. Snow White, though hesitant, finally took a bite. Almost instantly, she felt dizzy and weak. As her vision blurred, the queen shed her disguise, revealing her true form. With a wicked grin, she told Snow White that this had all been a trap. She confessed that it was she who had killed Snow White's father, all to take the kingdom for herself. Now, with Snow White finally out of the way, she had nothing left to fear. Laughing triumphantly, the queen disappeared. When the dwarfs returned home, they were horrified to find Snow White unconscious. They tried everything to wake her, but nothing worked. Grief-stricken, they realized it was too late. Snow White was gone. Heartbroken, they laid her down gently, surrounded her with flowers, and prepared for a burial. They couldn't bear to say goodbye, but they had no choice. Elsewhere, Jonathan had been locked in the same prison as the huntsman. Feeling remorse for his past, the huntsman made a decision. He helped Jonathan escape and showed him a secret path out of the castle. Jonathan followed it, running as fast as he could until he reached the dwarf's cottage, just as they were about to lay Snow White to rest. Seeing her lying still among the flowers, Jonathan was devastated. Tears in his eyes, he bent down to kiss her one last time. And then something magical happened. As he kissed her, a small piece of the poisoned apple slipped from her mouth, and Snow White took a breath. True love had broken the spell. Snow White slowly opened her eyes, and everyone around her cried tears of joy. She told them the truth, that her father had been killed by the queen, and that it was time to reclaim her kingdom. No more hiding, no more fear. With determination in her heart, she marched to the palace, Jonathan at her side. When they arrived, the evil queen tried to stop them. She raised her magic staff to strike, but Jonathan was faster. He snatched it from her hands and shattered it. Furious, the queen ordered her guards to seize Snow White. But Snow White stood tall and addressed the guards directly. She reminded them of the peace and happiness the kingdom once knew under her parents' rule. She promised to restore it, to bring back justice, love, and prosperity. She also revealed the queen's darkest secret, that she had murdered the king. Shocked by the truth, the guards turned on the queen and pledged their loyalty to Snow White. Now powerless and exposed, the queen had nothing left. Snow White gave her one final chance: leave the kingdom forever. In a final act of rage, the evil queen ran to her magic mirror and demanded it confirm her beauty. But the mirror told her the truth. Snow White is now the fairest of them all, because her heart is pure. The queen, unable to bear it, shattered the mirror. But in doing so, she destroyed the source of her power and herself. As the glass cracked, her body turned to crystal and shattered into 1,000 pieces. With her end, the mirror was restored, and so was balance in the kingdom. In the final scene, a grand celebration fills the castle. Music, dancing, laughter, and joy echo through the halls. Snow White and Jonathan stand side by side, surrounded by the dwarfs, the people, and the light of a new era. Snow White had reclaimed her rightful place, not just as queen, but as a symbol of love, strength, and hope. She vowed to rule with kindness and bring peace to all corners of her land. And so, with hearts full of joy, they all lived happily ever after.